Evelyn Harper pressed her daddy's last coins into her fist, wiped dust from her cheek, and stepped off the boardwalk toward the iron cage in the middle of Red Hollow Square. 12 grown men backed away. A condemned cowboy lifted his chained wrists, and she spoke the words that froze the whole town. "Marry me before sundown, or I lose everything my father died for." If a woman who refuses to kneel stirs your heart, please subscribe. Stay with this story to the final line, and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story has traveled. The first voice to break was a woman behind the dry goods window. "Lord have mercy, that Harper girl's gone and lost her wits." "Hush, Nell. Let her walk. Walk where straight into that killer's arms." Evelyn Harper did not turn her head. She heard every word, and she carried every word, but she did not turn her head. Her boots kept moving, one step, then another. The heat pressed her black mourning dress flat against her back, and she could feel the damp line of sweat running between her shoulder blades like a slow finger. She stopped 6 feet from the cage. The man inside did not lift his eyes at first. He sat on the wagon bed inside the iron wrists, shackled to a ring knees apart, head low. The sun had burned the back of his neck to a raw red. A fly walked across his knuckle, and he did not brush it away. Saving the energy, she thought. A man who knows what thirst costs. "Mr. Bennett," she said. His head did not move. "Mr. Wade Bennett." A slow turn now. He lifted his face, and she saw the split lip, the bruise blooming over one cheekbone, and eyes the color of a rifle barrel, left out in a long rain. "Ma'am?" One word. Flat. Not tired, not afraid. Just a man taking the measure of whoever had come to stare. "I've got business with you," she said. "Then you got bad taste in business, ma'am." "Maybe, but I've got nobody else." Someone in the crowd laughed. A sharp laugh, the kind that wants to be heard. "She's gonna faint," a voice called. "Catch her before she touches the bars, boys." "I ain't fainting," Evelyn said loud enough for the square. "And I ain't leaving till this man answers me." Boots thudded on the boardwalk behind her. A long shadow slid up beside her own. "Miss Harper." She knew the voice before she turned. "Sheriff Brigg?" "Step back from the cage, Miss Harper." "I will not." "Ma'am, that man is a murderer waiting on the rope. The territory's got no patience for folks what interfere with a lawful hanging." "Is this a lawful hanging, Sheriff?" "It's the law's hanging, Miss Harper. Same thing." "No, sir, it ain't." Amos Brigg was a big man who wore his badge the way some men wear a wedding ring, like it gave him the right to speak in other people's houses. He stepped close enough that she could smell the whiskey under the peppermint on his breath. "You go home, girl. Your daddy ain't been in the ground a week. Folks'll forgive a grieving woman a foolish walk if she turns around right now." "I didn't come here to be forgiven." "Then what did you come for?" She turned her head and looked him full in the eye. "I came to get married." The square went quiet in a way she had not heard since the morning her father died. Even the cicadas seemed to pause. Somewhere a horse shifted weight in its harness, and the creak of leather was the loudest thing in Red Hollow. Then the laughter began. Not the sharp laugh from before. A different kind. The kind that starts low and builds like something nervous. "Married?" "To him." "Did she say married?" Briggs' face changed. The easy authority flickered, and something harder slid underneath it. "You watch your mouth, Miss Harper. You watch it real careful." "I'm watching it fine, Sheriff." "You're making a spectacle." "I'm making a transaction." Behind the bars, Wade Bennett spoke for the second time. "Ma'am." She turned back to him. "Yes, Mr. Bennett." "You'd best go on." "I won't. Ma'am, whatever it is you think I can do for you, I can't. I'll be swinging by the time the rooster crows. A dead man ain't much use to a living woman." "That's exactly why I want you." He stared at her. The gray eyes did not blink. "Say that again." "I said that's exactly why I want you. A dead man signs his name and then he's gone. A living man changes his mind and I lose everything." "You're a cold one, ma'am." "I'm a tired one, Mr. Bennett." She saw something shift in his face. Not warmth. Not yet. Something narrower, like a man who had been watching a stranger for a long time, and just now started listening instead. What is it you want from me? Your name on a line. My name ain't worth spit in this town. It's worth what I need it to be worth. Which is what? Co-signature. On the deed. On the debt. On the ranch papers my father left behind that the bank won't honor unless a husband stands beside me. He took that in. She watched him take it in. You got a ranch? Harper Run. 1,600 acres. Summer grass, 2 creeks, and a mortgage held by a man who's waited a long time for my father to die. Who's the banker? Milton Crow. A small sound escaped him, not a laugh. Closer to a grunt a man might make when he recognized an old wound. Crow. You know him? I know the shape of him. Then you know why I'm standing here. Sheriff Briggs stepped between them, his palm up toward Evelyn, like she was a horse that needed settling. That's enough. That's more than enough. Miss Harper, you go on home. Mr. Bennett, you shut your mouth. This ain't a wedding chapel, it's a hanging square, and I won't have it turned into something else. Sheriff? Evelyn's voice came out steadier than she felt. I know the law, the Territorial Code Section 9. A condemned prisoner awaiting execution retains civil standing in matters of contract and marriage until the sentence is carried out. You can't stop me. I can keep the peace. Keeping the peace ain't stopping a legal act. It's stopping a riot. Nobody here's rioting, Sheriff. They're just staring. Where'd you learn the code, girl? My father taught me. He figured a rancher's daughter ought to know what could be taken from her and how. Your father was a fool. She did not answer that. She reached into the deep pocket sewn into the side of her morning skirt, and she pulled out a roll of bills bound in twine. She held it up where the whole square could see. $240, Sheriff. Bond and bail for a prisoner in territorial custody pending appeal. I've seen the paper and I know the sum. That's the law, too. He ain't got an appeal. He does now. I'm filing one on behalf of my husband. He ain't your husband. He will be before the judge puts down his glass. A man at the edge of the crowd laughed and then choked it off when his wife elbowed him. Evelyn felt the whole square tilt the way a stage tilts when the scene changes. Men who had been jeering a minute ago were now silent. Women who had been whispering were now listening. Briggs' hand dropped to the butt of his pistol. Not gripping, just resting. A warning, not a draw. You really mean to do this? I really mean to do this. You understand what he is. I understand what you say he is. That's a different thing. He killed a man-girl, shot him through the throat over a water dispute. So you say. The jury said. The jury was 6 men Crow feeds his whiskey to every Saturday. I was at the trial, Sheriff. I took notes. My father taught me that too. That hit him. She watched it hit him. The big, easy authority in his face cracked a little further, and she saw the mean streak underneath the part of him that did not like being contradicted in his own square. You watch yourself, Miss Harper. I'm done watching, Sheriff. I'm acting. Fetch the judge, somebody called from the crowd. A man's voice. She did not know whose. Fetch him yourself, Briggs snapped. I'll fetch him, the voice answered. Boots broke into a run. Briggs turned his head, and Evelyn saw her chance in the half-second his eyes left her. She took one step forward, and her hand closed around the iron bar of the cage. The metal burned. She kept her hand there. Mr. Bennett? Ma'am? Will you marry me? He looked down at her hand on the bar. He looked at her face. You know what you're asking. I know exactly what I'm asking. You'll be tied to a name the whole territory spits on. My name ain't doing so well either, Mr. Bennett. If I live past sunrise, ma'am, I'll be a man with enemies that don't quit. So will I. That's already true. That's why I'm here. He was quiet. The fly walked across his knuckle again, and this time he brushed it off. What do you get out of it, ma'am, plain words? A co-signature, a legal husband, the bank off my throat. Time to bring in the summer herd and pay down what's owed before Crow forecloses. And what do I get? A wife who'll pay your bond today, fight your sentence tomorrow, and bury you proper if she loses. That's more than the rope offers. That's cold comfort, ma'am. It's the only comfort I've got to give." He nodded slowly, the way a man nods when a trade has been fairly laid out. "All right. All right. All right, Miss Harper. Say it proper." "Proper how?" "Say, 'I will.'" "Ma'am, the vows ain't started yet." "Say it anyway, so I know you mean it before the judge gets here." He almost smiled. She saw it almost happen, and then it did not. "I will, ma'am." "Thank you, Mr. Bennett." "Wade." "Thank you, Wade." "Evelyn." "You know my name." "Heard your daddy speak it once, at a cattle pen in Dodge, 2 summers back. He was proud of you." She did not expect that. Her throat closed for one bad second, and she pushed it open by force. "That's a cruel thing to say to me right now, Wade Bennett." "Didn't mean it cruel. I know you didn't. That's what makes it cruel." The crowd shifted. A voice shouted that the judge was coming, and Evelyn turned without taking her hand off the bar. Judge Orrin Poole stumbled across the square between 2 townsmen, his coat half-buttoned, his white hair wild, a bottle still loose in his left hand. A small man who smelled of sour mash and old books. Her father had once said Judge Poole was the only honest thing about Red Hollow, and Red Hollow had drunk him half to death for it. "What in the name of all that's holy?" the judge slurred. "Judge Poole," Evelyn said. "I need you sober for about 4 minutes." "Girl, I ain't been sober for 4 minutes since your mama was buried." "Then 4 minutes of pretending, sir. I'll take it." He squinted at her. He squinted at the cage. He squinted at Brig. "Amos, you letting this happen?" "I ain't letting a damn thing happen, Orrin. She's got the code on her side and the whole square watching." "She does she?" "Territorial Section 9, Evelyn said. "I know the section, girl. I wrote 2 of its amendments." "Then you'll do this right." Judge Poole looked at Wade Bennett through the bars for a long moment, longer than Brig liked. She could see Brig's hand twitch at his belt. "Son," the judge said, "you know this woman." "I know her father, sir." "That's not the same." "No, sir, but I know her now, well enough for this." "You under duress." "No, sir." "You understand what marriage means in the territory." "I understand it means her name is hers, and mine stands beside it. I understand if I swing it passes to her clean. I understand if I live, I owe her." "That's a fair understanding?" The judge turned to Evelyn. "Miss Harper, I knew your father. He was a good man, and he raised a hard daughter, and I don't know whether to bless you or drag you home by the ear. Bless me, Judge. I ain't got a father to drag me anymore." He shut his eyes. She watched his face work. He opened them. "All right, girl. Do it through the bars. I want the whole square to see it." "I had planned to, girl. I had planned to." He began. His voice was gravel and whiskey, but the words were the words her father had said at her sister's wedding and at her mother's funeral. And they hit Evelyn now the way words only hit when they are spoken over your own life instead of somebody else's. "Do you, Wade Bennett, take this woman, Evelyn Harper, to be your lawful wife to have and to hold from this day forward in whatever hours remain to you on this earth under the eye of God and the territory?" "I do." 2 words, steady, no tremor. "Do you, Evelyn Harper, take this man, Wade Bennett, to be your lawful husband to have and to hold from this day forward under the eye of God and the territory and before the witnesses here assembled?" She could not speak for 1 beat. She thought of her father. She thought of the mortgage paper on the kitchen table with Crow's black signature on it. She thought of the summer grass burning on the high pasture and the cattle that had to be moved before the creeks dropped. "I do." "Ring." "There ain't one, sir." "There never is, girl." Hand. She reached her hand through the iron bars. Wade Bennett lifted his shackled wrists and slid his rough, dust-cracked palm against hers. His hand was hot. Hers was cold. He closed his fingers gently, the way a man closes a fist around something he is afraid to break. "By the authority of the territory," said Judge Poole, And by the power the Lord grants a drunk old man 1 sober minute at a time, I pronounce you husband and wife. God help you both." "Amen," said somebody in the crowd. "Amen," said somebody else. Then the silence came back. Evelyn did not let go of Wade's hand. She turned her face toward Sheriff Brigg, and she held up the roll of bills in her free hand. "Bond Sheriff, count it yourself." "Girl, count it. I'll count it at the jail. You'll count it here in front of the judge so there's no confusion later about what was paid." Brigg's jaw worked. He took the money. He counted it, slow, humiliated, every bill. $240. He finished. "It's here. Write me a receipt." "I don't carry paper in the square, girl." "Then sign the back of the warrant." He ground his teeth. He did it. "Now open the cage." "Girl, open the cage." "Sheriff, my husband is going home." The word husband landed on the square like a stone in water. She felt the ripple of it go out. Brigg took the key off his belt ring and he fit it to the lock. His hand was not steady. She noted that. A man like Amos Brigg did not let his hand shake unless he was angry enough to shoot somebody. He was not going to shoot today. Not here. Not with a sober judge 3 feet away and 100 eyes watching. The lock clicked. The door opened. Wade Bennett did not move for a long moment. Then he slid down from the wagon bed and his boots hit the dirt and he stood up. He was taller than she had remembered. The shackles still hung from his wrists because Brigg had not been given instruction to take them off, and Evelyn did not ask. "Shackles," the judge said. "Judge, he ain't Shackles Amos." Brigg unlocked the wrist irons. They fell into the dust. Wade Bennett rubbed one raw wrist against the other and did not make a sound. "Mrs. Bennett," the judge said. Evelyn blinked. "Yes, sir." "Take your husband home." "Yes, sir." She did not look at the crowd. She did not look at Brigg. She did not look at the cage. She turned on her heel, and she walked back across the square the way she had come, through the same dust under the same sun, and this time the whole town parted for her without a single word spoken. Wade Bennett walked 1 pace behind her, close enough that she could feel him there, not close enough that anybody could say he was pushing her or she was dragging him. At the edge of the boardwalk she stopped. She turned her head just enough to speak over her shoulder. "Wagons tied at the livery." "Yes, ma'am." "You call me Evelyn now, Wade Bennett." "We're past, ma'am." "Yes, Evelyn." "Can you drive a team?" "I can." "Then you're driving. I want both my hands free." "Free for what, Evelyn?" She looked down at the roll of bills now empty. She looked at the empty space in her pocket where her father's last coins had been. She looked at the sky, which was the hard white sky of a summer afternoon in the territory, and she felt something she had not let herself feel since the undertaker had closed the lid on her father 4 days ago. Not hope. Hope was a soft word, and she had no use for soft words anymore. Something harder than hope. Something with teeth. "Free," she said, "in case somebody tries to stop us before we get home." Wade Bennett took the reins from the livery boy, and the boy would not meet his eyes. "Son?" "Sir?" "You got a name?" "Toby, sir." "Toby, you look at me plain." The boy lifted his face. Wade Bennett held his gaze long enough for the boy to understand he was a man and not a thing. "Yes, sir." "That's better? Mrs. Bennett's paying you fair." "Yes, sir, 2 bits for the week." "Make it 4." Wade fished in his pocket, found nothing, and looked sideways at Evelyn. "Woman, I'm broke as a busted jug." "I know you are." She dropped 2 more coins in the boy's palm without looking at him. "Thank you, ma'am." "Don't thank me, Toby. Tell me who came sniffing at this wagon while it sat here." "Ma'am." "Who came by Toby? Since I hitched it this morning. Who walked past, who looked at the axles, who asked the liveryman questions." The boy's face went white under the dust. "2 men, ma'am." "Names?" "I don't know their names." "Describe them." One had a scar across his chin. One was missing the little finger on his left hand. Wade Bennett's jaw locked down. Tell Mrs. Bennett again. Sir. The finger. Which hand? Left hand, sir. Little finger gone at the knuckle. Wade and Evelyn looked at each other over the boy's head. She did not know the man with the missing finger. Wade clearly did. Get up on the seat, Evelyn. Wade, get up. We don't talk here. She climbed. He climbed after her. He flicked the reins and the team pulled them out of the livery yard and into the rutted street and past the last of the staring faces in Red Hollow. Nobody waved. Nobody called a goodbye. A woman in a gingham apron turned her back when they passed her door, and Evelyn noted that too. She was noting everything now. They cleared the last building, and the town dropped behind them. The rutted road stretched ahead through summer grass, gone the color of an old penny. Talk, she said. Man with no little finger is called Rafe Kern. Who is he? Trail hand once, then a gun. Works for whoever pays. And who pays him now? Don't know. But last I heard of Rafe Kern, he was running errands for a banker up in Cheyenne. Crow. Maybe, likely. And the other one, scar on the chin. I don't know the scar. You're lying. He turned his head, not angry, just surprised. Why do you say that? Because you went still when the boy said it. A man don't go still over a stranger. You read me quick, woman. I've been reading men since I was 9. My daddy sold cattle and cattle sellers lie for a living. Who is he? If I'm right about the scar, he's the brother of the man I'm said to have killed. The wagon rolled another 10 yards before she could gather herself to speak. That's not good, Wade Bennett. No, Evelyn, that ain't good. He'll want me dead too now. He'll want anybody whose name is tied to mine dead, yes. Well, drive faster. He did. The team picked up and the wagon complained and the road narrowed where the grass pressed up close on both sides. She sat with her hands folded in her lap because she did not trust them not to shake if she let them go free. She was married. She had been married for 18 minutes. She had paid for it with every dollar her father had left her, and she did not know the man beside her any better than she knew the horse pulling the wagon. Wade. Yes. I need to ask you a plain thing. Ask. Did you kill him? Which one? Whichever one got you in that cage. He thought about it. He did not rush. She liked that about him. A liar rushes. I put 2 men in the ground on that river, Evelyn. Both of them had guns on me and one on my partner. My partner died first. I killed the second man because he was about to kill me. I killed the third because he put a knife in my partner while my partner was already down and bleeding. That's what happened. The court said I shot one of them through the throat over water rights. They left out the knife, and they left out the partner, and they left out the fact that those 3 men had ridden out specifically to meet us on the bank. Who sent them? A man in a good coat who never put a boot on the ground the whole time. Did you see his face? I saw the back of his head. He rode off when the shooting started. You could not describe him to a court. No. So the court could pretend he never existed. Yes. Well. Then the court is a lie. Yes, Evelyn, the court is a lie. She sat with that. The sun punished the top of her bonnet. She felt a bead of sweat run down her neck and into her collar, and she did not move to wipe it. Small discomforts were a kind of company right now. Wade? Yes. If we make it to Harper Run, I'll feed you, and I'll bind whatever needs binding, and I'll give you a bed in the bunkhouse, and a rifle and a horse. That's the contract. All right? You don't sleep in the house. All right. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. I have not decided. That's your right, Evelyn. I know it's my right. I am telling you anyway because I want it said out loud between us, so there is no confusion later. There won't be any confusion. Good. The team shied. Wade's hand went tight on the reins. Whoa. Whoa now. What? Bird. What bird? The ones that ain't singing. She listened. He was right. The grass along the road had gone quiet in a way she did not like. Wade. Down. What? Get down in the wagon bed, behind the meal sacks. Now, Evelyn. She did not argue. She went. She slid off the seat and into the bed, and pressed her back against the flour sack her father had paid good money for last month and never got to eat, and her heart began to beat in a way she had only read about in cheap novels. They already know we're coming, Wade said soft over his shoulder. They're up in the rocks on the left. I count 2 hats. How can you count hats? You haven't turned your head. Shadows on the grass, woman. Wade. When I say go, you roll off the right side of the wagon. You hit the ground, you crawl into the brush, you do not stand up. You hear me? I hear you. Do not come back for me. I will come back for you. Evelyn? I said I will come back for you. Don't waste breath arguing. He almost laughed. Stubborn woman. Dead man walking. Go. The first shot cracked. It hit the top board of the wagon 6 inches above where her head had been 1 second earlier. She rolled off the right side the way he had told her, and her shoulder hit the dirt, and her bonnet tore loose, and she crawled. She crawled through the grass with her elbows and her knees, and she did not stand up, and she did not look back, because he had told her not to, and because she had one job now, which was to live. Behind her, she heard Wade Bennett say a word to the team she had not heard a man say out loud in a long time. Then she heard the wagon lurch. Then more shots, 3 of them close together. Then a pause. Then a 4th. Then a man screamed. Not Wade. A stranger's scream, the kind a man makes when he takes a bullet through a place that will kill him slow. She kept crawling. She crawled until the grass swallowed her, and she found the shallow wash she had known was there, since she was 7, the one her daddy had shown her the first time he took her out riding. She dropped into the wash and pressed her back against the dirt wall, and she listened. 2 more shots, then silence, then a horse moving, then a man's voice calling out. Bennett, Bennett, we know you're down there. Come out and we'll let the woman live. Evelyn Harper Bennett. 18 minutes a wife and already a widow. By all rights, reached under her morning skirt and pulled free the belt she had strapped around her thigh that morning. On the belt was her father's old Colt, the one he had carried since the war, the one she had cleaned twice a week since he died, because she could not bear to stop doing a thing her father had done. She drew the Colt. She checked the load. 6. Bennett, the voice called again. Last chance, cowboy. Wade Bennett did not answer the voice. Evelyn understood why. A man who answers gives away his position. A man who stays quiet makes the other man come looking. She waited for the voice to call a 3rd time. When it did, she used it to place the speaker. Up slope. 15 yards. Left side of a boulder she had climbed 100 times as a child. She moved. Low quiet the way her father had taught her to stalk deer on the high pasture before a summer storm. She was not a deer hunter. She was not a gun hand. She was a rancher's daughter in a black dress with a Colt, and a husband who was about to die if she did not do something stupid, and she was going to do the stupid thing, because the alternative was watching a man take a bullet for her and then take another bullet because of her. She reached the boulder. She went around it wide. She saw the back of a man's vest. He was crouched, rifle to his shoulder, sighting down into the road. She did not know if he was the scar or the finger. She did not care. She put the Colt against the base of his neck. Drop it. He dropped it. Hands. He lifted them. Turn around slow. He turned. Scar across the chin. Young. Younger than she had pictured. 20 at most. His eyes went wide at the sight of her in her morning dress with a pistol to his throat. Lady? Don't you lady me. Where's the other one? Lady I. Where? Other side of the road. In the willows. He's got a bead on your man. Call him. Lady. Call him and tell him it's done. Tell him you got Bennett. Tell him to come up. He won't believe me. He will if you sound scared enough. And you are scared, son. I can feel your pulse in the barrel. The boy swallowed. He called. His voice cracked in the right place. He called again. From across the road, another voice answered, rough and older and impatient. You got him. I got him, Rafe. Alive or dead? The boy's eyes darted to Evelyn. She pressed the Colt harder. Dead, he said. About damn time. Hold there. I'm coming up. Evelyn breathed out once slow. Good boy. Lady, please. Keep your mouth shut and your hands high, and you live past noon. Open it again and you don't. You hear me? Yes, ma'am. She waited. She heard Rafe Kern come up through the grass. She heard his boots. She heard his breath. When he cleared the boulder and saw the back of the young man with his hands in the air and the woman in black holding a Colt on him, Rafe Kern did what a man like Rafe Kern always does. He went for his gun. Evelyn fired first. She did not aim for his chest. Her father had told her once, a long time ago, that a woman who tries to hit a man in the chest in a fight will hit him in the arm because the chest is smaller than people think, and the arm is bigger than people think. And what a woman ought to do in a bad moment is aim for the biggest part of a man and live with the result. She aimed for the middle of him. The Colt kicked. Rafe Kern dropped. The young man screamed and bolted. She let him go. She let him go because she had 4 shots left and a husband on the road and no time to chase children through the grass. Wade, she called. Wade Bennett. It's Evelyn. A pause. Stand up slow, Evelyn Harper. Hands where I can see them. I ain't sure yet that ain't a trick. She stood up slow. Her hands were shaking now. She let them shake. Wade Bennett rose out of the grass 40 yards down the road with her father's old trail rifle at his shoulder, which meant he had gotten into the toolbox under the wagon seat and broken the lock, which meant she was going to have to get it re-riveted. It was a strange thing to think in that moment. She thought it anyway. Evelyn. It's me. Who you got there? A dead man and a runaway boy. The boy armed. No more. You hit? No. Come down the slope to me. Slow. She came. She kept her hands where he could see them because he was right to want that, and because a man who had just been shot at did not owe any woman the benefit of the doubt, even a woman he had married that morning. She came down the slope and she stopped 6 feet from him. He lowered the rifle. Evelyn. Wade. You shot a man. I did. First time. Yes. You all right? Ask me tomorrow. That's fair. Are you hit? Grazed. Left shoulder. Nothing broke. Let me see. On the road, Evelyn. Keep moving. The boy'll run home and he'll come back with more, and I don't want to be here when he does. Wade? Yes. I knew that Scar man wasn't anybody's brother. What? He didn't have the right face. A brother has the same face. That man was hired. Wade Bennett looked at her for a long second. You got sharp eyes, woman. I got sharp everything now. Get on the wagon. They got on the wagon. The team was still there, blowing hard, one of them bleeding from a crease along the rump where a bullet had parted the hair. Wade snapped the reins and they moved. Evelyn reloaded the Colt as they rolled. Her hands finally stopped shaking around the second round. Wade. Yes. What was on the dead man? I didn't check. Why not? Because I was waiting for my wife to stop holding a gun on a boy and come down the slope, so I knew she was alive. She did not know what to do with that sentence. She put it away to think about later. Next time, check the body. Next time, Evelyn. There'll be a next time. Yes, ma'am. Evelyn. Evelyn. They rolled. The sun dropped a degree. The grass hissed under the wheels. She watched the ridge behind them until it was a smudge, and then she watched the ridge ahead of them because her father had told her that a smart traveler watches the place she is going to be, not the place she has already been. Wade? Yes. Tell me about Rafe Kern. He rode with a crew that hired out to big outfits, cattle buyers, rail companies, a few banks. You hired Rafe Kern when you needed a thing to happen that you didn't want your own name on. Then Crow hired him. Or the sheriff did with Crow's money. Same thing. Same thing. They knew I was coming to town today. They knew. They knew because my housekeeper told them. Wade's head turned. Evelyn. Hattie Price. She's worked at the house since I was a girl. I told her last night I was going to town this morning and why. You told her about the cage. I told her I was going to find a man to co-sign. I did not tell her which man, but she would have guessed soon enough. And Hattie Price sends her wages every month to her brother. Her brother works at Crow's Bank. A long beat. Evelyn. Yes. You've got a spy in your house. I've got a woman who is fond of me and loyal to her brother and hasn't decided which is stronger. That's different from a spy. It ain't different enough to me. We'll deal with Hattie when we get home. Not before. Evelyn. I said not before Wade Bennett. All right. They rode. Somewhere past the second creek crossing, she saw the smoke from the Harper Run chimney rise thin and pale over the grass, and she felt her chest unclench for the first time since the square. That's my fire. Yours. Ours, I reckon, for now. For now. They rolled up the long drive. She saw the barn first, then the bunkhouse, then the long porch of the house her father had built with his own 2 hands the summer before she was born. A woman came out onto the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. Hattie Price. Gray hair in a bun. Face creased by 40 summers of cooking other people's meals. She stopped when she saw the wagon, and she stopped again when she saw the man beside Evelyn. Miss Evelyn. Hattie. Lord in heaven, child, who is this man? My husband. Hattie Price put her hand to her throat. You're what? My husband Hattie. Wade Bennett, married this afternoon in the Red Hollow Square by Judge Poole. The whole town saw it. You will too when the gossip walks out this far, which will be by supper. Miss Evelyn. Hattie, come closer, please. Hattie came closer. She came right up to the wagon, and she stopped at the wheel, and she looked up at Evelyn with the face of a woman who has done a thing she knows is a wrong thing, but did not know how wrong until this minute. Miss Evelyn? Hattie! When did you last write to your brother? Hattie's mouth opened. Miss Evelyn, Answer me plain, Hattie. I am tired and I am dirty, and I have killed a man on the road, and I do not have the patience I used to have. When did you last write to your brother? Tuesday. And what did you tell him? Miss Evelyn. What did you tell him, Hattie? I told him you were going to town on Friday to do something desperate. I told him I was afraid for you. I asked him to speak to Mr. Crow on your behalf. I thought Mr. Crow might be gentle with you for old time's sake because he knew your father. Wade Bennett looked away. Evelyn understood. He did not want his face to show what his face was doing. Hattie. Miss Evelyn. 2 men were waiting for us on the road. They tried to kill my husband and they would have killed me second. Lord Jesus. Mr. Crow is not gentle, Hattie. Mr. Crow has never been gentle. You knew my father. You should have known that. Miss Evelyn, I swear to you on my mother's grave, I never meant. I believe you never meant. I do. But meaning isn't what saved or killed us on that road, Hattie. Telling did. The old woman began to cry. She put her face in her apron. Evelyn watched her cry and did not climb down from the wagon. Hattie. Yes, child. You are going to pack a bag tonight. You are going to take the wages I owe you plus 2 months extra. You are going to take the little gray mule. You are going to ride to your sister's in Cheyenne, and you are not going to come back to Harper Run, and you are not going to write to your brother again until I tell you it is safe to do so. Do you understand me? Miss Evelyn, please. Hattie Price. Do you understand me? Yes, child. Thank you, Hattie. The old woman turned and walked back into the house with her apron to her face. Evelyn watched her go and did not blink until the door closed behind her. Then she climbed down from the wagon and her knees buckled for 1/2 second, and Wade Bennett caught her elbow from where he stood on the other side of the team and held her steady until she found her feet again. Evelyn. I'm all right. You ain't. I am enough, Wade Bennett. Enough is what I've got today. That was a hard thing you just did. It was a thing that had to be done. Yes. Will you unhitch the team? I will. There's a basin and a pump around the side of the house. Clean that shoulder before you come in. Yes, Evelyn. I'll put water on the stove. Yes, Evelyn. She went up the porch steps. Her legs carried her. She opened the door of the house her father had built, and she stepped inside, and she smelled the bread Hattie had been baking when they rolled up, and she saw the kettle on the stove, and the calico curtains her mother had sewn before Evelyn was born, and she stood in the middle of the kitchen, and she did not cry. She set her father's Colt on the table. She set the empty purse next to it. She set the receipt for the bond next to the purse. She straightened all three until their edges were even with the edge of the table. Then she put water on the stove. When Wade Bennett came into the kitchen, his shirt was off his left shoulder and his undershirt was pulled down to the bicep, and the graze was cleaner than she had feared, but not clean enough. He sat where she pointed him, which was the chair her father had sat in every morning of her life. He did not know the weight of that chair, and she did not tell him. Hold still. Yes, Evelyn. This is going to burn. I've had worse. Not from me. No, not from you. She poured the whiskey. He sucked air through his teeth but did not move. She packed the wound with clean cloth. She wound the bandage over his shoulder and tied it off tight enough to hold and loose enough to heal. Wade. Yes. The man on the road. The dead one. I shot him in the belly. I know. He didn't die quick. No. That kind don't. Will you ride back out at first light and check the body? Yes. Check the pockets. I want to know who paid him. I want paper. I want a name written down somewhere. Yes, Evelyn. And Wade. Yes. If there's a second boy out there in the grass still alive, you bring him in. Alive. I want him to talk. Yes, Evelyn. She tied off the last knot of the bandage. She stepped back. She looked at the man in her father's chair with a fresh white bandage against his brown shoulder and a day's worth of blood and dust on the rest of him. And she felt something climb up her throat that was not grief and not fear and not anything she had a name for. Wade Bennett. Evelyn? I do not know you. No. But you stood between me and a bullet today. That was the trade. It was not. The trade was a signature. Nothing in the trade said you had to draw their fire off the wagon so I could roll. He did not answer. Wade. Yes, Evelyn. The bunkhouse has a cot and a stove and clean blankets. There's a rifle over the door. Tomorrow I'll show you the barn and the pasture and the ledgers. Tonight you eat at my table and you sleep where I said you'd sleep. And tomorrow we start over like two people who know one thing about each other instead of none. What's the one thing? You don't run. He considered that. That's a fair thing to know about a man, Evelyn Harper. Bennett. Bennett. She turned to the stove to check the water, and because she did not want him to see her face for one more minute. She heard the chair creak as he stood. She heard him cross the kitchen. She heard him stop at the door. Evelyn. Yes. That boy. The one who ran. What about him? He'll ride straight to Crow. I know. Crow will know by tomorrow noon that we're alive and that Rafe Kern is dead in the grass. I know. He'll send more. I know Wade Bennett. I am counting on it. Wade Bennett did not sleep in the bunkhouse that night, the way Evelyn Harper Bennett had told him to. He slept on the porch with the rifle across his knees, his back to the front door, his hat over his face. She did not discover this until she stepped out at 4 a.m. with a lantern in her hand and nearly put her boot down on his leg. Wade Bennett. Evelyn. I told you the bunkhouse. I heard you. Then why are you on my porch? Because anybody who comes at this house tonight comes at the front door first, and I'd rather be where they're coming than where they ain't. She set the lantern on the boards. She sat down on the top step. He did not move his hat from his face. You can see me, Wade Bennett. Don't pretend. I can see you fine. How long you been awake? Never been asleep. That'll wear a man down. I've worn thinner. You're going to town with me in 4 hours. I know. You need your hands steady. They'll be steady. She looked out at the drive. The summer night smelled of dry hay and horse and the faint sweet rot of a peach tree that had dropped too much fruit. Wade. Yes. Did you go out to the body? Not yet. Waiting on light. You'll go as soon as the sun cracks. Yes. And you'll be back by 7 so we can ride. I'll be back by 6:30. Good. She picked up the lantern. She went back inside. She did not sleep either. She sat at the kitchen table with her father's Colt and a cup of coffee that went cold in her hand, and when the sky outside the window finally turned the color of a bruise going yellow, she heard Wade Bennett ride out. He came back before 6:30 the way he had promised. He came into the kitchen with dust on his boots and a folded square of paper in his hand, and he set the paper on the table in front of her without a word. She unfolded it. It was a bank draft. $20, drawn on the First Territorial Bank of Red Hollow, signed in a clean copperplate hand by Milton Crow himself. Evelyn Harper Bennett read it twice. This is sloppy of him. Crow don't sign his own name for hired killing Evelyn. He ain't that stupid. Then what is this? That's the other thing. I went through his pockets twice. That draft was in his vest folded inside a piece of a torn envelope. Wasn't hid. Wasn't even tucked deep. Planted. Planted. So somebody wants me to believe Crow signed for Rafe Kern's bullet. Somebody wants you to ride into town today waving that paper and screaming Crow's name in the street. And what happens if I do? You get shot for slander by the first deputy who sees the paper in your hand, and the paper disappears before the coroner writes it down. She folded the draft very small. She slid it into the tin coffee can on the shelf behind the stove, the one her mother had used for buttons, the one nobody ever looked in. Wade. Yes. Somebody in Crow's circle is not on Crow's side. Looks that way. That is a useful thing to know. Yes, Evelyn, it is. We don't say it out loud again. No. Not even between us. No. She poured him coffee. He drank it standing. She watched the window go from bruised yellow to the washed-out white of another summer morning, and she thought about all the mornings her father had stood exactly where Wade Bennett was standing now. And she thought about how strange it was that grief did not make a sound when it moved through a kitchen. Wade? Yes. We go in through this feed store door of the bank, not the front. Why? Because the front door is where Crow wants us to come in, and I do not intend to give that man one thing he wants today. That's smart, Evelyn. I'm tired of smart Wade Bennett. I want mean. Then we'll be mean. They rode in at 8. She did not wear mourning. She wore a dove-gray riding dress with a high collar, and she pinned her hair up tight, and she rode her father's bay horse with her father's Colt on her hip under the long coat. Wade rode a ranch mare, and he carried the trail rifle across his saddle bow, where any man in town could see it and count the cartridges in the loop of his belt. They went through the feed store. The feed store man looked at them once, and then looked hard at his ledger, and did not look up again. Evelyn noted it. She noted everybody who did not look at her this morning. The side door of the bank opened on a narrow hall, and the hall opened on Milton Crow's private office. And Milton Crow was behind his desk with his waistcoat buttoned and his spectacles polished, and a silver pen laid across a stack of papers that had been prepared. Evelyn saw at once, at least 2 days before. Mrs. Bennett. Mr. Crow. I had hoped you would come in through the front, Mrs. Bennett. The clerks have been waiting. I am sure they have. Will you sit? I will stand. As you wish. Mr. Bennett, you may sit. I'll stand too. As you wish. Crow was a slender man of about 55, with a soft voice, and the kind of clean fingernails that spoke of a life never spent pulling a calf out of a cow in the rain. He smiled the way a cat smiles when it has a mouse under one paw and is not yet hungry enough to eat it. Mrs. Bennett, allow me to express my sorrow at your father's passing. Jonah Harper was a man of deep principle. He was. His principle cost him as principle often does. What did you just say to me, Mr. Crow? I said, Mrs. Bennett, that your father was a man who held the line. I meant no disrespect. You meant every syllable of disrespect. Proceed with the papers. He blinked. The cat had felt the mouse bite. Of course. He turned the papers around. He indicated lines with his silver pen. He spoke in a murmur of percentages and maturities and conveyances, and Evelyn Harper Bennett read every line of the document before she let anyone's pen touch a page, and she caught 3 things in the first 2 minutes. Mr. Crow. Yes, Mrs. Bennett. Paragraph 4, line 3. The rate is listed at 9%. My father's original note was at 6. The original note matured, Mrs. Bennett. The new rate reflects the current. The original note did not mature. My father paid it down on the 15th of every month for 11 years. You restructured it without his written consent in the spring and called it matured. Mrs. Bennett, I assure you. Correct the rate to 6 or we don't sign. A long beat. Crow's pen hovered. 6. 6, Mr. Crow. And paragraph 7, the water clause. You have written in a right-of-way for the bank's assignees across the North Creek. That is a standard provision. It is not a standard provision. Strike it. Mrs. Bennett. Strike it, sir. Wade Bennett said nothing. He stood a quarter step behind her right shoulder with his hat in his hand and his face turned slightly toward the door, and any man in the room with eyes would have understood that a bullet coming through that door would have to go through him before it reached her. Crow struck the water clause. And paragraph 11. Mrs. Bennett, surely paragraph 11 is... Paragraph 11 says that in the event of my husband's death or incapacitation, the note reverts to acceleration. You slipped a widow clause into a marriage contract, Mr. Crow. Strike it. I will not strike paragraph 11. Then we do not sign. Mrs. Bennett, you are aware that without this signature by end of business today, foreclosure proceedings. I am aware, Mr. Crow. Are you aware that without this signature you do not get your railroad corridor? Because that is what paragraph 11 is about, is it not? If my husband dies, the note accelerates, the ranch forecloses, and the north pasture and the creek corridor become bank property in time to be sold to the rail company when it comes through next spring. The room went very still. Mrs. Bennett. Strike it, Mr. Crow, or I walk out this door and I ride to the territorial capital and I file a complaint with the Office of the Attorney General on Monday morning, and I bring the receipts for every payment my father made for 11 years, and I bring the notation in his own hand where he recorded your visit to his sickbed and what you said to him about the rail company. I have the diary, Mr. Crow. My father kept one. That was not true. Her father had not kept a diary. He had kept a tally book of cattle weights and a ledger of debts and a Bible with some names written inside the front cover. But Milton Crow did not know that. Milton Crow had never been inside her father's house. She watched Crow's face. Crow struck paragraph 11. She signed. Wade signed. She blotted both signatures herself with her own blotter because she did not trust Crow's blotter not to have an extra page under it that picked up a copy she had not seen. The deed, Mr. Crow. The deed will be recorded by end of business. The deed will be stamped now in front of me, and I will carry the certified copy out of this office in my own hand. That is not... Stamp the deed, Mr. Crow. He stamped the deed. She took the certified copy. She folded it into the inside pocket of her coat. For one clean second she had won. She let herself feel it for that second. Then she put it away. Because Milton Crow had not fought her hard enough on paragraph 11, and a man like Milton Crow did not let a prize slip unless he had a second prize he liked better. Mr. Crow. Mrs. Bennett. What is it you are not telling me? Crow smiled. The cat had found a new mouse. Mrs. Bennett, I do wish to extend my congratulations on your marriage. A woman in your position needs a husband. Your husband, however, is a man with considerable legal complications. He was tried. He was sentenced. I posted bond. Indeed. And because of the, shall we say, unusual nature of that bond, the Territorial Administration has taken an interest. A United States federal marshal was dispatched from Cheyenne 3 days ago. He should arrive in Red Hollow by Tuesday morning. His name is Thomas Vale. Perhaps you have heard of him. She had heard of Thomas Vale. Everyone in the territory had heard of Thomas Vale. He had hanged a senator's son in Laramie 2 years back for killing a Mexican teamster, and he had not blinked when the senator wrote to Washington. I have heard of him. Then you understand, Mrs. Bennett, that your bond and your marriage and your creative interpretation of paragraph 9 of the Territorial Code may not survive the marshal's arrival. I mention this only out of consideration for your widowed state. Out of consideration. Yes, Mrs. Bennet. Mr. Crow. Mrs. Bennet. There is something else. Is there? There is. You are smiling too much for a man who has just lost paragraph 11. What is it? Crow folded his hands on the desk. He took his time. Mrs. Bennet, your husband had a partner on the Green River last spring. A man named Silas Doyle. Wade Bennet did not move. Evelyn felt him not move the way a person feels a bell go quiet. Mr. Doyle had a wife. Her name is Clara. He had a son of 4 years. The boy's name is Owen. After Mr. Doyle's death, Mrs. Doyle and her boy had no means of support. They were taken in by a charitable party. Who, Mr. Crow? A charitable party, Mrs. Bennet. They reside at present at a farm outside Cheyenne. They are in good health. They are quite safe. Mr. Crow. Yes. If one hair on that woman's head, or one hair on that child's head, is touched, I will burn your bank to the foundation stones with you inside it. Crow laughed, a light, dry laugh like paper catching. Mrs. Bennet, you shock me. I don't shock you at all, sir. I clarify for you. There's a difference. Mrs. Bennet, no one is threatening anyone. I merely observe that in the event Mr. Bennet were to choose, say, to flee the territory before Marshal Vale's arrival, or to involve himself in any further disorder, the charitable party caring for the Doyle family might find its resources strained. That is all. That is all. That is all, Mrs. Bennet. She looked at Wade. He was white under the dust. She had not thought a man with his color of skin could go white. We're done here, Mr. Crow. Mrs. Bennet, do consider, we're done. She turned. Wade turned a half-second after her, which meant Wade's legs had not been obeying him for a half-second, and she noted that too. They went out through the feed store door. They did not speak. They mounted. They rode out of Red Hollow at a walk, because a gallop would have told the whole town something, and Evelyn Harper Bennet was not telling the town one single thing this morning. At the edge of town, Sheriff Amos Brigg stepped into the road with 2 deputies behind him. Mrs. Bennet? Sheriff? I'll need a word. You'll get one as I pass, Sheriff. I am not stopping. Mrs. Bennet? Sheriff. My horse is not stopping. My husband is not stopping. I am not stopping. You will either shoot me or step aside, and Judge Poole is still sober enough at this hour to know which one of those things you did. Briggs' jaw worked. He stepped aside. They rode past him. They rode past the edge of town. They rode until the buildings dropped behind and the road emptied, and then Evelyn Harper Bennet kicked her father's bay horse into a hard canter, and Wade Bennet rode up beside her and matched her stride for stride, and neither of them spoke for 3 miles. At the second creek crossing, she pulled up. He pulled up beside her. The horses blew. She looked at him across the space between their saddles. Wade Bennet. Evelyn. Silas Doyle was your partner. Yes. You did not tell me his name. No. You did not tell me he left a wife and a child. No. Why? Because I did not want them to become your problem. Wade Bennet, they were already my problem the minute I walked up to that cage. I just did not know their names. He swallowed. She watched his throat move. Evelyn? Yes. I'm going to tell you the whole of it now. Good. Not on the road, at the house, with the doors shut. Ride. They rode. They did not canter this time. They saved the horses because they did not know how many more miles the horses would be asked to run in the next 3 days. They came up the long drive of Harper Run in the full white of midday, and she saw that Hattie Price had already gone because the little gray mule was not in the pen and there was no smoke from the stovepipe. Hattie Price had done as she was told. Wade stripped the saddles. He watered the horses. He walked the fence line of the near pasture before he came into the house, and she did not rush him. When he came in, he shut the front door, and he shut the back door, and he took the rifle down from the hook over the back door, and he leaned it by the stove, where a man could reach it from the kitchen table. Then he sat down in her father's chair. "Evelyn?" "Tell me." Silas Doyle was 29 years old. He was a trail boss out of Texas. I worked under him 4 years. He was fair. He was the first man I ever worked for who was fair. Go on. Last spring he bought into a cattle contract with a rancher up near the Green River. The rancher was old. The rancher was sick. The rancher wanted to sell his summer grass one last time before he died. Silas and I rode up to close the deal. It was 200 head at $20 a head. The banker in Cheyenne had loaned Silas the money against his own land. Silas's land. Crow. Go on. We rode to the river. We camped the first night. We woke up at dawn to find 3 men sitting on the other side of our fire with their rifles in their laps. They did not say hello. They said they had been sent to inform us that the cattle contract was void and that Silas's loan was being called in that morning and that Silas's land had already been foreclosed on Tuesday in a proceeding Silas had not been notified of. Lord, Silas said that was a lie. Silas said he had a certified copy of the loan agreement with a repayment schedule through October. Silas reached into his coat to get the certified copy. One of the 3 men shot him in the chest before his hand cleared the lining. Oh, Wade. He did not die quick, Evelyn. He looked at me across the fire and he said 3 things. He said, Clara. He said, Owen. He said, don't let them bury me here. Her eyes burned. She did not let herself blink. Go on. I shot the man who had shot Silas. I shot the second man when he stood up. The third man ran for his horse, and I hit him in the back as he was mounting, and he fell, and his horse dragged him for maybe 80 yards before his foot came out of the stirrup. He was dead when I walked up to him. Behind them on the ridge, there was a 4th man. He never got off his horse. When the shooting started, he turned his horse and he rode off. I did not see his face. I saw his coat. It was a city coat, Evelyn, not a trail coat. Crow's coat. Crow or a man Crow paid. What did you do then? I buried Silas. I did not let them bury him there. I rode him 30 miles to a town called Pritchard, and I buried him in the churchyard with a stone I paid the stonecutter to carve. Then I wrote a letter to Clara Doyle. I told her where Silas was buried. I told her there had been a killing, and I would be accused of it, and that she should take the boy and go to her sister in Dakota. I sent the letter with a man I trusted. By the time I rode back south to give my account to a court, the sheriff of Red Hollow had already put out paper on me for 3 murders on the Green River. Silas's letter never reached Clara. No. Because Crow got to her first. Yes. And now he has her and the boy. Yes. Wade. Yes. This changes everything. I know. We cannot run. If we run, she dies and the boy dies. I know. We cannot fight openly. If we fight openly, she dies and the boy dies. I know. So what do we do? Evelyn. What? We send for her. Who from? A man I trust. Who do you trust, Wade Bennett, with a woman's life and a child's life? He was quiet a long beat. A man named Elias Quinn. He rode with Silas and me 2 seasons. He is in Laramie now working for the railroad. He is a hard man, and he is a quiet man, and he owes Silas his life from a crossing on the Red that went bad in '85. Can you reach him? I can send a wire tomorrow from the station at Cotter's Bend. It is 15 miles north. Brigg does not watch Cotter's Bend. Send it tonight. Evelyn, the station closes at 6. Send it at dawn. Take the bay. Ride fast. Be back by noon. And Wade Bennett. Yes. If Elias Quinn says no, we think of something else. We do not abandon that woman or that child. Do you hear me? I hear you. She stood up. She walked to the cupboard. She took down the tin that had her mother's buttons in it, and she took out the bank draft Wade had found on Rafe Kern, and she laid it flat on the table. Wade? Yes. We need to shoot better than we shoot. You shot fine on the road. I shot lucky. Lucky doesn't come twice. I can teach you. Teach me today, after we eat, before dark. Yes. And I will teach you the books. I can't read a ledger, Evelyn. Then you'll learn. You have a ranch now. A man who has a ranch and can't read its books is a man waiting to be cheated. Yes, Evelyn. She fed him. She fed herself. Neither of them said much over the plates. After she took him out behind the barn where her father had set up a row of whiskey bottles on a fence rail when she was 9 years old, and had not moved them since because her father had believed a girl should know how to shoot before she knew how to flirt, and because her mother had not lived long enough to argue the point. He watched her shoot first. She put 3 out of 6 on the bottles at 20 paces. He did not laugh. Your grip. What about it? You're choking it. Loose your thumb. She loosed her thumb. She shot again. 5 out of 6. Your feet. What about my feet? Square up. You're angled like a woman who's been told not to stand wide in a dress. Stand wide, Evelyn. She stood wide. 6 out of 6. There. Wade Bennett. Yes. My father taught me to shoot standing narrow. Your father was a kind man who loved you. A kind man does not want to see a daughter stand wide and look like a man. That's fine in a kitchen. It ain't fine in a gunfight. She reloaded. She shot 6 out of 6 again. She handed him the Colt. Your turn. I don't need the practice, Evelyn. Neither do I. I am showing you my father's gun so you know what he shot. A man should know his wife's father through something. He took the Colt. He balanced it in his palm. He sighted down the barrel once and handed it back. He shot true. He did. Later at the kitchen table, she opened the ledgers for him. She showed him the columns: cattle, feed, debt, wages. She showed him where her father had paid Crow for 11 years in a hand that got thinner each winter. She showed him the last entry her father had made 3 days before he died. $200 owed to the mercantile. 42 head of cattle standing in the south pasture. One daughter 23 years old, named in the margin. He put my name in the margin of the ledger, Wade. Yes. He did not put my brother's name, only mine. You had a brother. I did. He died of fever in 71. He was 9. I am sorry, Evelyn. It was a long time ago. That don't matter. She looked up from the ledger. He was across the table from her with the lamplight on one side of his face, and she saw him for the first time the way a woman sees a man she has agreed to bury if he swings. Not a stranger, not a husband. Something in between that had no word yet. Wade Bennett. Yes, Evelyn. I am going to say a thing, and I do not want you to answer it. All right. Today in Crow's office, when he said the name Clara Doyle, you went white under the dust. I saw it. And I thought a thing. I thought this is a man who loves the people he is bound to. I thought this is a man who would walk into fire for a woman and a child who are not his wife and not his son. He did not answer. She had told him not to. I thought, Evelyn Harper Bennett, you have married better than you deserved in a square under the noon sun, and you did not know it until this hour. She stood up. She crossed to his side of the table. She took his face between her 2 hands, and his face was rough and warm, and he did not pull away. She kissed him once. Short, dry. The kiss of a woman who has decided a thing and wants it on record. She stepped back. That is all, Wade Bennett. All right, Evelyn. Ride to Cotter's Bend at dawn. Send the wire. Come home. Yes, Evelyn. She walked to the window. She stood there with her hand on the frame, and she looked out at the drive and at the long road that ran down to Red Hollow, and she watched the last of the daylight go out of the summer grass. Behind her, Wade Bennett blew out the lamp. He did not sleep in the bunkhouse again. He slept on the porch again, rifle across his knees, hat over his face. She did not argue with him this time. She lay in her own bed in her father's house, and she listened to him breathe through the open window, and she counted the hours until dawn. At 4:30 in the morning, she heard him saddle the bay. At 4:40, she heard him ride out. At 9, she was at the kitchen table with coffee going cold in her hand, exactly as she had been the morning before, when she heard the sound she had been dreading since the moment Crow had said the name, Thomas Vale. She heard the sound of many horses on the road. She stood. She walked to the front window. She lifted the curtain with 2 fingers. A column of dust was rising off the Red Hollow road, moving steady, moving close. She counted riders as they came out of the dust. 8, 12, 15. More behind them she could not see yet. At the head of the column rode a man in a dark coat with a star on his chest that caught the sun, and beside him rode Sheriff Amos Brigg, and beside Brigg rode Milton Crow. Wade Bennett was 15 miles north at Cotter's Bend. Evelyn Harper Bennett was alone in the house her father had built. She let the curtain fall. She walked to the stove. She took her father's Colt off the table, and she checked the load. 6. Evelyn Harper Bennett did not run to the barn for the rifle. She did not run to the cellar for shelter. She set the Colt on the kitchen table with the handle toward the door, and she took off her apron, and she smoothed her hair with both hands, and she walked out onto the porch the way a woman walks out to greet company she has been expecting. She stopped at the top step. She folded her hands in front of her waist. The column rode up the drive and fanned out in front of the house the way riders fan out when they have done this kind of work before. 15 men. 16. A deputy to the left of the barn. 2 riders around the back. She counted them without moving her eyes. The man in the dark coat rode to the foot of the steps and stopped. He did not dismount. Mrs. Bennett? Marshal. Thomas Vale, United States Marshal, Cheyenne District. I am here to speak with your husband. My husband is not here. Where is he, ma'am? I will not answer that until I know why you are asking. A small quiet ran through the riders. The marshal did not look angry. He looked like a man who had been told the weather would be hot and had now confirmed it with his own skin. Mrs. Bennett, I have a warrant for the arrest of Wade Bennett on charges of 3 counts of murder, flight from lawful custody, and fraudulent contracting of marriage to evade execution of sentence. I have come to serve it. Fraudulent contracting of marriage. Yes, ma'am. Marshal Vale. Ma'am, I am the woman who contracted the marriage. I stood in the square in Red Hollow the day before yesterday, and I asked Judge Orrin Poole to marry us, and he did. I paid $240 of bond money out of my own hand. I have the receipt in my coat. If there was a fraud, Marshal, I am the one who committed it. Arrest me. Mrs. Bennett, I am asking you, sir, if the charge stands, arrest me. Put the irons on my wrists. Ride me back to Red Hollow in front of these men. Let the town see that a United States Marshal rode 15 miles at the word of a banker to arrest a grieving woman for the fraud of getting married. Milton Crow's horse shifted. Crow did not speak. He was smart enough not to speak yet. Mrs. Bennett, the fraud charge pertains to the intent behind the marriage, not the form. Then the fraud charge requires a witness to the intent. Who is your witness, Marshal? Mr. Milton Crow has filed a sworn statement. Mr. Milton Crow was not present at the marriage. He has sworn to the character of the transaction based on what, Marshal? Based on gossip. Based on what the sheriff told him. Based on what he wishes were true so he can take my land. Mrs. Bennett. Marshal Vale. I am asking you one plain thing. Did you read Mr. Crow's statement before you rode out this morning, or did Mr. Crow read it to you? The marshal's jaw set. He did not answer. That was its own answer. Sheriff Amos Brigg nudged his horse forward half a step. Marshal, if you'll permit me. No, Sheriff. Sir? I said no, Sheriff. Step back. Brigg stepped back. Evelyn noted it. The marshal did not want Brigg in the conversation. The marshal had noticed something and was not sure what yet. Mrs. Bennett? Marshal. Where is your husband? My husband rode out at dawn to send a telegram. I will not tell you where. I will tell you that he did not flee. He will return to this house before nightfall under his own power. If you wish to arrest him here. I will not have him shot off his horse on a country road by men who will then swear he drew first. Crow's head turned a quarter inch. She had aimed the sentence at him. She saw the arrow land. Mrs. Bennett, no one here intends to shoot your husband off a horse. Marshal, 2 men tried to shoot my husband off this very road 2 days ago. I killed one of them. I have his name. I have the bank draft that was in his pocket. I will give both to you if you give me your word as a federal officer that you will act on them. That sentence landed differently. The marshal's eyes narrowed. It was not a dramatic narrowing. It was the narrowing of a man who had just heard a fact he had not been briefed on. A bank draft. Yes, sir. From whom? Evelyn looked at Milton Crow. Crow's face was very still, a hunter's stillness. From a man who may or may not have signed it himself, Marshal. I will give it to you in private. I will not give it to you in front of this company. Mrs. Bennet. Sir? I will take that statement. Milton Crow spoke for the first time. Marshal, I must object. The woman is stalling. Her husband is a convicted killer. Every minute we stand here is a minute he gains ground. I urge you to search the property and apprehend Mr. Crow. Marshal, I did not ask for your counsel. Sir, Mr. Crow, you rode out with me at your own insistence. You are a complainant, not an officer of the court. You will hold your tongue in the presence of this warrant, or you will ride back to town. Am I clear? Crow's mouth closed. Evelyn Harper Bennet felt the first crack in the wall. It was not a wide crack. It was the width of a hair, but she had been a rancher's daughter for 23 years, and she knew that a hair-wide crack in a wall meant water had already gotten inside. Marshal Vale. Ma'am, will you come up onto this porch, alone, and let me show you what I have? Mrs. Bennet, I am not going to leave my men to— Sir, I am one woman. I am unarmed in this moment. She lifted her hands, palms open, fingers spread. My husband is not on this property. Hattie Price, who cooked for me my entire life, is not on this property. There is no one in that house but me and the papers my father left behind. Come up on the porch, sir. Bring a deputy with you. Come and see. The marshal looked at her a long time. Sheriff Brigg? Sir, hold this line. No man dismounts. No man approaches the house. No man fires a shot under any circumstance without my direct order. Am I clear? Yes, sir. Say it back, Sheriff. No man dismounts. No man fires without your direct order. Good. The marshal swung down. He took one deputy with him, a young man with a sunburned nose and a face that had not yet learned how to lie. He came up the steps. He took off his hat at the door. Evelyn liked him a little for that, and she did not want to like him, and she filed the liking away to think about later. Ma'am? This way, Marshal. She walked him into the kitchen. The Colt was on the table. He saw it. He did not reach for it. He did not ask her to move it. He sat down where she pointed, which was her father's chair, and he laid his hat crown down on the table beside the gun. She opened the tin. She laid the bank draft flat. $20, drawn on First Territorial, signed Milton Crow. He read it. He did not touch it. Where did you get this, Mrs. Bennet? Off the body of a man named Rafe Kern, whom I shot on the Red Hollow Road 2 days ago. You shot him. I did. With what? With the pistol on that table. Why? Because he and another man were lying in wait to kill my husband and me on our road home from the courthouse. My husband was pinned behind the wagon. I flanked the pair of them. I put a Colt to the young one's neck. The older one came up over the rock and went for his gun, and I shot him before he cleared it. The young one ran. I did not chase him. He rode to Red Hollow and reported to a man I cannot prove yet, but we both can guess. Marshal Vale looked at her a long moment. Mrs. Bennet. Sir. A woman does not usually describe her first killing that clean. Marshal. I buried my father 6 days ago. I was married through iron bars 4 days ago. I killed a man 3 days ago. I have not yet had time to fall apart. I will do that later in a room with no one watching when my husband is safe and this ranch is mine free of Milton Crow. Until then, I will speak plain, and I will speak short, and I will not lie to a man with a star on his chest if that man is willing to listen. Are you willing to listen, Marshal Vale? I am listening, Mrs. Bennet. Then hear this. That draft was planted. Planted. Yes, sir. It was folded inside a torn envelope in Rafe Kern's vest. Not hidden, not creased from a long carry. Clean. Fresh. A man does not carry his paymaster's signed paper on a killing ride. Someone in Crow's circle put that draft on that body. Someone wanted me to run into town waving it and screaming his name and get shot in the street by a deputy for disorderly conduct before the coroner could copy the signature into the record. Mrs. Bennet, that is a serious allegation. I know it is, Marshall. I am not asking you to act on it. I am asking you to hold it in your pocket and watch the faces of the men on my drive when you ride back down my steps. Why? Because one of those men knows who planted it, and that man Marshall is not on Milton Crow's side anymore. And if you watch for him, you will find him, and when you find him, you will learn things about this town that no one has been willing to put on paper in 11 years. The Marshal picked up the draft. He folded it into his inside coat pocket. I will hold this. Thank you, Marshal. Mrs. Bennet, where is your husband? Cotter's Bend, sending a wire. To whom? To a man named Elias Quinn in Laramie, who is going to get a woman and a child out of a farm outside Cheyenne before Milton Crow has them killed to control my husband's testimony. Mrs. Bennet. Sir? Say that again slowly. She said it again slowly. She told him about Silas Doyle. She told him about Clara and Owen. She told him what Crow had said in the bank office the morning before. She did not embroider. She did not plead. She told him the way her father had taught her to report a cattle count to a buyer, which was numbers and names and nothing else. When she was done, Thomas Vale sat in her father's chair with his hands flat on his knees for a long time. Mrs. Bennet? Yes. If one word of what you have told me is untrue, you will go to a federal jail for a long time. I understand. If every word is true, then I have been used this morning in a way I do not care to be used. I understand that also, Marshal. He stood up. He put his hat on. He walked to the door. He stopped. Mrs. Bennet? Yes, sir. The draft in my pocket. If it is genuine, it is worth your husband's life. If it is planted, it is worth a great deal less. Are you certain which it is? Marshal Vale. I am certain of nothing today except that my husband is riding home on that road right now, and if your sheriff puts a bullet in him before he reaches this porch, the question of the draft becomes the least of your troubles. My sheriff, Mrs. Bennet. Your sheriff for today, sir. He went out. She followed him. She stopped in the doorway and watched him go down the steps, and she saw the line of men on her drive tighten the way a rope tightens when a weight drops on the other end. Sheriff Brigg? Sir? Stand your men down. Back them off to the foot of the drive. No man on this property above the gate. Sir, with respect. Without respect, Sheriff. Back them off. That was when it happened. That was when Amos Brigg, who had been humiliated in a square by a woman in a mourning dress, and had been humiliated again now in front of 16 men by a marshal who had ridden out at his complainant's word, did the thing a man like Amos Brigg does when humiliation has worked on him too long. His hand moved to his pistol. Sheriff? Sir, she is stalling. Her eye caught it a half-second before the marshal's did, because she had been watching Brigg's hands since the day he had laid one on her arm when she was 16. Marshal? Ma'am, step back inside. Brigg drew. He did not draw on the marshal. He drew past the marshal. He drew at her, standing in the open doorway of her father's house, and he drew, because the part of his mind that still thought it could win this day had decided that a dead Evelyn Harper Bennet was a simpler problem than a living one. She was already moving. She had been ready for this since Crow had said the name Thomas Vale out loud. She dropped to one knee inside the door, and her hand was on the Colt on the table before her knee touched the floor, and she came up with it in both hands, and she fired through the open doorway. At the same instant, Amos Brigg's first bullet took a chunk out of the doorframe 6 inches above her head. She hit him in the chest. He did not fall at once. Men who are hit in the chest rarely fall at once. He took a step back. He raised the gun again. She shot him a second time, and he went down off his horse in a way that told her he would not be getting up. Then the whole drive opened up. A deputy on the left fired at the house. A deputy on the right fired at the house. 2 riders behind Crow spurred their horses and broke for the gate. Marshal Vale's voice rose over the guns calling a ceasefire that no one was listening to, and for a terrible 3 seconds, Evelyn Harper Bennet thought, "This is the hour I die. This is the hour my father's house burns. This is the hour Wade Bennett rides back into a yard full of corpses, and mine is one of them. Then she heard the rifle behind the barn. One shot. A ranch rifle. Not a deputy's carbine. Not a marshal's revolver. Her father's trail rifle fired by a man who knew how to hold it. The deputy on the left went off his horse. The marshal shouted again, and this time half the men heard him. The riders who had broken for the gate pulled up because Wade Bennett was standing at the gate with the rifle at his shoulder, and the bay horse lathered behind him, and he had come up the back way through the creek, the way he had promised her last night he would, if the day went bad. "Hold!" the marshal roared. "Hold, damn your eyes, every man of you hold!" They held. The yard went still. There were 2 bodies on the drive. Amos Brigg, the deputy Wade had shot. The remaining riders sat their horses with their hands very deliberately away from their hips, the way men sit when they have just understood they are one twitch away from being shot by a federal officer. Wade Bennett came up the drive at a walk. He did not lower the rifle. He walked past the marshal. He walked past the men. He came up the steps to the porch, and he stopped 1 pace from Evelyn, and he looked at her the way a man looks at a wife he thought he had lost in the last 3 minutes. "Evelyn." "I'm not hit." "You sure?" "I'm sure, Wade." "Put the gun down, ma'am." She looked down. She had not realized she was still holding the Colt at full arm's length, both hands hammer back. She eased the hammer. She set the Colt on the porch rail. Marshal Thomas Vale walked up to the bottom of the steps. He was not looking at Wade. He was looking at the body of Amos Brigg in the dirt. "Mr. Bennett?" "Marshal." "I am going to ask you to hand me that rifle." "Yes, sir." "Slow." "Yes, sir." Wade Bennett walked down the steps. He handed the rifle over butt first. The marshal took it. He did not put cuffs on Wade. Evelyn noted that too. "Mr. Crow." Milton Crow was white under his hat. He had not moved since the shooting started. He was not a man built for close gunfire, and he knew it now the way a man sometimes learns a thing about himself too late. "Marshal." "Mr. Crow stepped down off that horse." "Marshal, I must protest. Mr. Crow stepped down off that horse, or I will have you pulled down off it." Crow stepped down. "Deputies, take Mr. Crow's sidearm. Bind his hands. He is in federal custody pending investigation into the death of Silas Doyle, conspiracy to commit murder on the Red Hollow Road, conspiracy against the widow and child of a United States land patent holder, and anything else I find in his books when I get to them." Crow found his voice. "Marshal Vale, this is outrageous. You have no evidence. Mr. Crow, I have a bank draft in my pocket with your signature on it found on the body of a hired killer. I have the sworn statement of a woman whose word I have begun to credit. I have the body of Sheriff Amos Brigg lying in her yard, shot while drawing on an unarmed widow in her own doorway in front of 16 witnesses, including a United States Marshal. I have more evidence, Mr. Crow, than I have had in the last 14 months of my service. Bind his hands." They bound his hands. Crow looked up at Evelyn on the porch. For the first time since she had known him, his face was not smooth. "You." His voice was low. "You cannot prove Clara Doyle." "Mr. Crow." "You cannot prove one word of it. Mr. Crow, by tomorrow night, Elias Quinn will have her and the boy on a train headed east. My husband sent the wire this morning. You plan to kill her in 3 days. You have no more days, Mr. Crow. You have right now, and you have however long the marshal keeps you alive for trial." Crow's mouth opened. It closed again. The marshal mounted. 2 deputies put Crow on a horse with his hands tied in front of him. A 3rd deputy put a blanket over the body of Amos Brigg and lashed it across the back of the sheriff's own horse. Men worked in silence. The yard smelled of powder and blood and horse sweat, and Evelyn Harper Bennett stood on her porch with her father's Colt on the rail beside her, and she did not look away from any of it. Marshal Vale turned his horse before he rode out. He touched the brim of his hat to her. "Mrs. Bennett." "Marshal, I will be back in 3 days to take statements, from both of you. I will expect your husband to be on this property when I come." "He will be marshal." "Mr. Bennett." "Sir, your case is going to be reopened. I make no promises about the outcome. But the case is going to be reopened, and it is going to be heard by a judge who is not Orrin Poole and not a friend of Milton Crowe. Yes, sir. Good day, Mrs. Bennet. Good day, Marshal. He rode out. The column rode out behind him. Milton Crowe rode in the middle with his hands tied and his head down, and Evelyn Harper Bennet watched them go until the dust rose and fell, and the road was empty again. She stood there a long minute. Then her knees went, and Wade Bennet was behind her before she hit the boards, and he caught her under the arms, and he eased her down onto the top step of the porch, and he sat down beside her without letting go of her shoulders. Evelyn. I'm all right. No, you ain't. No, I ain't. Breathe. I am breathing, Wade Bennet. Breathe slower. She breathed slower. The yard blurred. She had not cried since her father died. She did not cry now either, but something in her chest broke loose that had been locked since the morning she had walked into the Red Hollow Square, and she sat on her father's porch with a man she had married 4 days ago, and she let the thing move through her without fighting it. Wade. Yes. You came up the creek. I came up the creek. You heard the shooting from the gate. I heard it from the second bend. I was already riding hard. How did you know to come the back way? Because you told me last night, Evelyn. You said if the day goes bad, come through the creek. I listened to you. You listened to me. Yes, Evelyn. She put her face against his shoulder. The shoulder was still bandaged under his shirt from the graze on the road 2 days ago. He did not flinch. Wade Bennet. Yes. Clara Doyle. Elias wired back before I left the station. He was already in the saddle before my wire reached him. Somebody else had gotten word to him a day ago. He was halfway to the farm when my telegram caught him. Somebody else? Somebody in Cheyenne, Evelyn. I don't know who yet. But somebody with eyes on Crow's business got nervous enough to reach out to Silas's old friends without being asked. Wade. Yes. The draft in Rafe Kern's pocket. Yes. Somebody planted it. Somebody wanted Crow to fall. Yes, Evelyn. We are not the only people Milton Crowe has hurt. No, we are not. She lifted her face from his shoulder. She looked out across her yard past the blood and the dirt, past the broken doorframe, past the rail where her mother had once hung wash out to dry on a summer morning, before Evelyn Harper had been old enough to remember her face clearly. Wade Bennet. Yes, Evelyn. We are not done. No, Evelyn, we are not done. But for today. For today. For today we are still standing. Yes. She did not let go of his hand. They sat on the porch until the sun had moved a full hand's width across the boards, and neither of them spoke for a long time, because speaking would have required the kind of strength neither of them had left. Wade Bennet was the first to move. He stood. He held out his hand. Evelyn. Yes. Come inside, woman. You've sat with the dust long enough. The dust has things to tell me, Wade Bennet. It'll tell you tomorrow. It'll still be there. She let him pull her up. Her legs felt like somebody else's legs. He walked her into the kitchen and set her down in her father's chair, and for the first time since her father had died, she did not feel like an intruder in his seat. He poured her coffee. The coffee was hours cold. He did not apologize. He set it in front of her, and he stood at the stove with his back to her, and he began to build a new fire in the iron belly of it, and she watched him do it without telling him how. Wade? Yes. You have never built a fire in that stove. No. But you know how. Every stove is the same stove, Evelyn. You just have to listen to it. My father used to say that. Then your father was right. She did not answer. She watched the kindling catch. She watched him feed the fire up slow, the way a man feeds a fire he plans to keep going for a long time. The next 3 days moved the way days move when a bone has been broken, and the body has begun to lay down new bone around it. Slow, tender, surprising in what hurt and what did not. Marshal Thomas Vale came back on the 3rd day as he had said he would. He came alone. He rode up the drive at a walk with his hands on the reins and nothing near his hip, and he tied his horse to the same rail where Amos Briggs' blood had been scrubbed out of the dirt, and he took off his hat before he came up the steps. "Mrs. Bennet?" "Marshal?" "Mr. Bennet." "Sir?" "I will take your statements now, separately. The lady first, if you please." He sat at the kitchen table, with a folded leather book open in front of him, and a pencil sharpened down to half its length, and he wrote what Evelyn Harper Bennet told him in a small, clean hand that surprised her because she had not expected a federal marshal to write like a schoolteacher. When she was finished, he asked her 3 questions. Then he asked her 3 more. Then he closed the book. "Mrs. Bennet." "Marshal, I owe you an apology." "Sir, I rode out to this house with 15 men to arrest your husband on a warrant that rested when I examined it on the sworn word of a banker and the annotations of a sheriff who is now dead for drawing on you in your own doorway. I did not look close enough at the paper before I rode. I am looking close now." "Thank you, Marshal." "Do not thank me yet. I have not finished." "No, sir. Milton Crow is in a federal jail in Cheyenne. He has hired 2 lawyers. He will not see the outside of a courtroom for a long time. Clara Doyle and her son Owen are in the care of Elias Quinn at a farm outside Laramie. They are safe. They are frightened. They will need to come back to this territory to testify, which frightens them more. I have arranged a military escort for them when the time comes. Clara Doyle, Marshal, tell me about Clara Doyle." "Mrs. Bennet, she asked me to tell you something." "Yes?" "She said to tell Mrs. Bennet that she is alive because a stranger in a mourning dress walked up to a cage in a square. She said to tell Mrs. Bennet that her boy is alive because a stranger did not mind her own business. She said to tell Mrs. Bennet, thank you, and she will say it to her face when she is brave enough to come east." Evelyn Harper Bennet set her cup down because her hand was not steady enough to keep holding it. "Marshal Vale." "Ma'am." "Tell her she does not owe me thanks. Tell her she owes me a visit. Tell her there is a room in this house that has been empty since my mother died, and it would suit her and the boy for as long as they want it." "I will tell her, Mrs. Bennet." "Sir?" "Ma'am." "One more thing." "Yes." "The bank draft, the one in Rafe Kern's pocket. Have you found out who planted it?" Marshal Vale closed his leather book. He tapped the cover twice with his pencil. He looked at her across the table. "Mrs. Bennet." "Yes." "A clerk at First Territorial Bank. A young man named Harlan Price." A pause. She felt the name drop into her chest like a stone into a well. "Harlan Price, Marshal." "Yes, ma'am." "That is Hattie Price's brother." "I know it is, ma'am. Hattie Price wrote to her brother the night before I rode to town. Hattie Price was the woman I sent away the day after my wedding. Hattie Price was the woman I believed was feeding word to Milton Crow." "Yes, ma'am." "Then Hattie Price was not feeding Crow. Hattie Price was feeding her brother, who was feeding someone else who was planting drafts on Crow's own hired killers." "That appears to be the shape of it, Mrs. Bennet." "Lord in heaven." "Ma'am?" "Marshal Vale." "Yes. I put a good woman on a mule and sent her to Cheyenne thinking she had sold me." "You did not have the full picture, Mrs. Bennet. Neither did I. Neither did Harlan Price. He was trying to save you and hurt Crow at the same time, and he did not think through what an older sister in your kitchen might be charged with. He is a young man. He is sorry." "Is he in trouble?" "He will be a federal witness. He will not be prosecuted. He asked me to carry a letter to his sister. I have it in my saddlebag." "Marshal." "Ma'am?" "Send her home." "Ma'am?" "Send Hattie Price home to this kitchen. Send her on the first train she will take. I will wire her the fare myself. Tell her Evelyn Harper was wrong." "I will tell her, Mrs. Bennet." He rose. He took Wade's statement in the parlor for an hour. He came back through the kitchen, and he touched his hat to her, and he stepped down off her porch, and he did not ride out of her life, but out of the first part of it. The hard part. The bleeding part. The part she would remember when she was old. Hattie Price came back on a Tuesday afternoon, 11 days later. She came up the drive on the little gray mule, and Evelyn Harper Bennet walked down to meet her, and the old woman climbed off the mule and the two of them stood in the road without saying a word for a count of 10. Then Hattie Price took Evelyn Harper Bennett's face between her two old hands, and Evelyn Harper Bennett, who had not cried for her father, who had not cried when the marshal had ridden up her drive with 15 men, cried then, standing in the road, with the dust of the long summer on her skirt, and the hands of a woman who had raised her on her cheeks. Child. Hattie. I am sorry I was your spy without knowing it. Hattie, I am sorry I thought you had chosen a banker over me. Child, I could never. I know, Hattie. I know now. The old woman wiped her eyes on her apron and looked past Evelyn at the porch where Wade Bennett stood with his hat in his hand. That is him. That is him, Hattie. He is older than I thought. He is my age, Hattie. He is just weathered. He stands like a man who has decided to stand. He does, Hattie. Child. Yes. Take me inside. I will cook my first meal back, and I will burn the first pan, and then I will cook my second meal. And you will tell me everything that has happened in this house since I left it, and I will not interrupt. Yes, Hattie. Clara Doyle came in September when the grass had begun to go from pale gold to the color of old brass, and she did not come alone. She came with her boy Owen, who was 4 years old, and did not speak the first 3 days he was at Harper Run. He walked behind his mother's skirt and held the hem of it in his fist, and he watched Wade Bennett with the eyes of a child, who remembered more than a child ought to remember. Wade did not push the boy. Wade did not crouch and hold out a hand and ask the boy if he wanted to see a horse. Wade walked past the boy on his way to the barn every morning and said, "Morning, Owen Doyle," the way a man greets another man, and he went on about his work. On the 4th day, the boy followed him to the barn. On the 6th day, the boy rode in front of Wade on the saddle out to the south pasture to count the cattle that still wore Silas Doyle's brand because Wade had gone up to the old rancher's estate and bought them back with money he did not yet have. And he had handed the bill of sale to Clara Doyle the first night she sat at Evelyn's table, and he had said, "These are Silas's cattle. They are yours and the boy's. I will run them for you until the boy is old enough to run them himself. The brand stays." Clara Doyle had not cried when she read the paper. She had looked across the table at Wade Bennett, and she had said, "Silas told me once that you were the most honest man he had ever worked with. I thought it was something a husband says. I am learning it was not." On the 7th day, Owen Doyle said his first full sentence to Wade Bennett. He said, "My daddy had a horse named Pepper." Wade Bennett said, "Pepper was a fine horse, son. Your daddy picked him out of a string of 40 at a sale in Abilene. I was there. Your daddy knew horses the way some men know scripture." The boy nodded. He did not smile. But something in his small shoulders came down a 1/4 inch that day, and Evelyn Harper Bennett saw it from the porch, and she turned her face away because she did not want to cry in front of Hattie Price, who was hanging sheets on the line. The trial came in October. Milton Crow was convicted of 4 counts, including the murder of Silas Doyle by procurement, and he was sentenced to 20 years in a federal prison, where the summers were not as hot, and the men were not as polite. Judge Orrin Poole was called as a witness, and he arrived in the courtroom sober, and he testified for 3 hours, and when he was finished, he walked out into the hall, and he took a drink from a flask in his coat pocket, and he sat down on a bench, and he did not get up for a long time. He retired from the bench the next month. He died 2 years later of a quiet heart in his sleep, which everyone agreed was kinder than he had any right to expect. Wade Bennett's conviction was vacated on the 22nd of November. The new judge read his statement, read Evelyn's statement, read Clara Doyle's statement, read Elias Quinn's statement, and read the deposition of Harlan Price. Then he called Wade Bennett to the stand, and he asked him one question. "Mr. Bennett, did you kill 3 men on the Green River last spring?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Why?" "Because they killed my friend in front of me, and they were going to kill me next, Your Honor. I had a choice between dying and shooting. I shot." The judge closed the file. Case dismissed. Mr. Bennett, you are a free man. You are also, in my view, a man who ought to write a letter of apology to his wife for the trouble he has caused her. I suggest you do so in person. Wade Bennett walked out of the courthouse into a late autumn afternoon in Cheyenne. Evelyn Harper Bennett was waiting for him on the steps. He did not speak at first. He walked down to her. He took off his hat. "Evelyn?" "Wade. I owe you a letter of apology. The judge said so." "The judge is a romantic." "The judge is a sensible man-woman." "Write it on the train." "I will." He did not write it on the train. He held her hand instead the whole way back to Red Hollow, and neither of them said anything about it, because some things a man does not need to write down when a woman is sitting right next to him and her hand is warm in his. They came home to Harper Run on the 2nd day of December, which was the first day of a light cold in that country, and Clara Doyle was at the stove when they walked in. And Owen Doyle was asleep, with his head on Hattie Price's lap, and Hattie Price was darning a sock and humming a song she had sung to Evelyn when Evelyn was 3 years old. Wade Bennett stopped in the doorway and looked at the kitchen of Harper Run for a long moment, and Evelyn watched his face, and she saw in it a thing she had been waiting to see for 5 months. He saw a home. Not a place he was boarding, not a place he was earning. A home. He did not say it. She did not make him say it. She walked past him and hung her coat on the peg by the door, and she said, "Hattie, is there coffee?" And Hattie Price said, "Child, there has been coffee on this stove every hour you have been gone, and there will be coffee on this stove every hour you come back. Sit down." They sat down. Later that night, when the boy had been put to bed in the room that had been Evelyn's mother's, and Clara had gone to her own room to write her first letter in a long time to her sister in Dakota, and Hattie had gone to her bed in the little room off the kitchen where she had slept since Evelyn was 8. Wade Bennett stood at the back door of the house and looked out at the dark pasture. Evelyn came and stood beside him. "Wade Bennett." "Yes, Evelyn." "I have a thing to say to you." "Say it." "You have slept on my porch since the night of our wedding. You have slept in the bunkhouse 3 nights, and the other nights you have slept on the porch. You have never once slept inside this house." "No." "Why?" "Because you told me not to the night I came home with you, and I have not heard you tell me different." Wade Bennett. "Evelyn, I am telling you different." He turned his head. He looked at her. "Evelyn." "Yes." "You are sure?" Wade Bennett. "I have been sure since the day you turned your horse at Cotter's Bend and rode back up the creek because a woman you married for a signature was alone at a house with 16 men on her drive. I have been sure since you put a bill of sale in Clara Doyle's hand for cattle you could not afford, and said the brand stays. I have been sure for a long time. I have just been waiting for the house to be quiet enough to say it." Evelyn. "Yes." "I love you, woman." "I know you do, Wade Bennett." "Say it back." "I love you." "Say it plainer." Wade Bennett. "I love you. I married you for a signature, and I kept you for a reason I did not yet have a word for, and the word came to me sometime in August when you were standing at my back fence showing my neighbor's boy how to mend a post, and I have been carrying that word around since. I love you." Evelyn Harper Bennett. "Yes." "Come inside." "I am inside, Wade Bennett." "Come further inside, woman, with me." She did. The spring came. The first green came up through the winter grass. The cattle dropped their calves, and the calves got up on spindle legs and ran their first crooked runs around their mothers, and Owen Doyle learned to ride a small pony named Biscuit that Wade Bennett bought for him at a sale in Laramie. Clara Doyle stayed the winter and half of the spring, and when she left, it was to go home to her sister in Dakota, with her boy on her hip, but she promised to come back for the summer, and she did, and she brought her sister, and the sister stayed. In April, Evelyn Harper Bennett told her husband she was going to have a child. He sat down on the porch step, and he put his face in his hands for a full minute, and when he took his hands away, his eyes were wet, and he said only, "Woman, woman." And then he said, "We will name him for your father, if he is a he." And she said, "We will name her for your mother, if she is a she." And he said, "My mother's name was Ruth." And she said, "Then we will name her Ruth Wade Bennett." And he said, "Yes, Evelyn, Ruth." The child was a girl. She was born in late November, with Hattie Price at the foot of the bed, and Clara Doyle holding Evelyn's hand, and Wade Bennett pacing the kitchen and wearing a line in the boards that Evelyn would tease him about until he died. The baby was healthy. The mother was healthy. They named her Ruth after Wade's mother as they had agreed. Marshal Thomas Vail sent a letter of congratulation from Cheyenne. He had taken a post as chief federal officer for the territory. He promised to visit when he could. He came twice a year after that for the rest of his life, and he always brought a small thing for the child, and he always sat at the kitchen table and drank Hattie's coffee and told Evelyn the news of the territory, and he was the only federal officer Evelyn Harper Bennett ever invited to her table. Milton Crow died in a federal prison in the 7th year of his sentence. He died of a fever nobody sent a doctor to treat. The news came to Harper Run in a short telegram. Evelyn read it aloud at the kitchen table. Wade Bennett said only, "He should have lived to see the rail not come through here." And she said, "Yes." The rail had gone north through a different corridor because a federal commissioner had read the trial transcripts and had decided that the land around Red Hollow had cost enough blood. The ranch survived. The ranch did more than survive. By the 10th year after the wedding, in the square, Harper Run was one of the 3 largest cattle operations in the county, and the brand ran on 2,000 head, and Owen Doyle, who was 14 then and almost as tall as Wade, ran his mother's half of it like a man twice his age. Red Hollow changed. A new sheriff was elected, a black veteran of the 10th Cavalry named Moses Freeman, and he was honest, and he served for 22 years, and he died in office, and was buried in the churchyard next to Judge Orrin Poole, and the town paid for both stones. On a late summer afternoon many years after the day in the square, Evelyn Harper Bennett Gray at the Temples now walked down the long drive of Harper Run with her husband. Ruth, their daughter, was 20 and away at a teacher's college in Denver. Owen Doyle, grown and married, lived on the north parcel with 2 children of his own. Hattie Price was buried in the hollow behind the house with a stone that read, "Faithful." Clara Doyle had remarried and had a second family in Dakota, and she wrote once a month, and Evelyn wrote back. At the gate, Evelyn Harper Bennett stopped. She put her hand on the top rail, the same top rail her father had built the summer she was born. Wade Bennett. "Yes, Evelyn. It is a good fence." "It is." "Who built it?" "Your father built it. I mended it. Owen painted it last spring. Ruth sat on it when she was learning to read. 4 of us in one fence. 5 counting Clara Doyle, who leaned on it the day she came back to tell Silas's boy where his father was buried. 5 of us in one fence." "Yes, woman." She turned and looked back up the drive at the house her father had built. She looked at the barn, the bunkhouse, the 2 new outbuildings, the rosebush Hattie had planted the year Ruth was born. She looked at everything she had almost lost the summer a banker had thought a grieving daughter would not fight. "Wade." "Yes, Evelyn." "I was 23 years old, and I walked across a square, and I asked a condemned man to marry me. I remember, Evelyn. I did not know then what I was doing." "No." "I know now." "Yes." "I was not buying a signature Wade Bennett. I was building a house." "You were Evelyn." And it stood. It stood. In a country where powerful men believed land could be taken, truth could be buried, and a woman without a father could be cornered into surrender. Evelyn Harper Bennett and Wade Bennett proved that some homes are not inherited by law. They are not granted by banks. They are not written by courts. They are built by 2 people who refuse to kneel, and they stand because the 2 people who built them paid in blood, in loyalty, and in the quiet courage of staying. Harper Run stood. It stands still. And it will stand as long as there are women brave enough to walk across a burning square, and men steady enough to walk back out of a cage and keep walking. That is the end of the story.